Chair, and welcome everybody. I know you've been here previously, but not in the guise of the CNAG's report. So I have been listening in on the meeting, and I have just one question. It's not often we ridicule people on the basis of their profitability, particularly as a utility for the state. But I would assume that the setting up of Irish Water is essentially the equivalent of ESB.
Yes.
So you are in quite the early stages as right. So with regard to that profitability, I am concerned about one thing, and it's not the same as my Deputy O'Connor. With regard to the housing crisis that we face, Mr. Gleeson, is it fair to say who determines the price of connections on a commercial basis, or the level of the fee? Like, we have huge issues with determining affordable housing. And I'm just wondering, now, by no means are your profits such of gigantic proportions that we would solve the housing crisis or the affordability issue, but how do you interlink with that requirement?
And that's not, again, just to remind you, the profits do go back into capital investment.
Yes,
so there's no question of them sitting there doing nothing. So we're very dedicated to the Housing for All programme. But we are a regulated entity, so it's the Commission for Regulation of Utilities. We engage with them. They would set our billing costs with non-domestic, but also the connection prices. Chris, do you want to come in and just explain maybe how that...
Well, no, to be fair, if it's the regulator, I think then, I do believe, Chair, then that at some point it's possible that we would bring the regulator in and have that discussion, because I think it is significant. And in the realm of where we are today, I think we should maybe add the regulator to the work programme.
Yeah, and that regulation process is coming up for review, I think, in the next year or so. So we'd be happy to engage on some, because we've had challenges that we think are difficult to work with as well under that regime. So
I think we're probably then it's an opportune
the work programme,
time.
Deputy, in the afternoon as normal. So if you want to put it on it, you want to put on the item for the agenda.
Because I think, we have to join the dots. If you're under the guise of a regulator, we need to understand who does what and where that is. So thanks for that, Mr. Gleeson. And this is no disrespect to you, Chair, I would have a very different experience in Wexford in particular as to how leaks are dealt with and different things. There are problems, don't get me wrong, and there are some huge problems with outages that were experienced in around 2020, early 23. I'm sure everyone will remember the Crea debacle, which I now know is fully sorted. We had some issues in Enniscorthy in August for a week, and essentially the answer comes back that it's increased usage without being able to build up a reserve. So I don't have the same issue though on a day-to-day basis where I make a complaint. It does get dealt with very promptly. I will say that, and I think credit where credit is due. So I don't know if it's the ground staff in different counties or how it's dealt with, but I don't have that same experience, and I'd like that. Later. Absolutely, maybe they should take some lessons down in Wexford. I don't know, Chair. But the other thing is, we do have an issue when it comes to the farming sector with regard to who's responsible for reading these meters. And I think one big issue is that I have brought it to you before, but where it's a significant issue is that the farmer themselves are either not able to read the meter because it's at a significant depth, they can't see, it's raining, there's water on top of it. There are issues like that. So I'd just like to know how you deal with that, plus the frequency of an actual read, because there tends to be big bills accumulating that they don't expect. Now, we have to find a way. I'm not saying they don't owe the money, but clearly it is. There can be a massive bill comes in that they weren't expecting. We have to find a way to deal with that. And that's in light of where you're seeing farm incomes drop significantly. In the case of dairy, 67%, in the case of tillage. So we do need to look at how we deal with that to prevent bills or bad debts occurring. You might just give us a note in relation to that rather than going through the whole process of how you deal with it, and I can liaise with my own constituents on that matter. But I am interested in how we determine certain projects, how we determine what goes ahead. So there is a rural, I just get the name right now, the Rural Water Programme that I'm aware of, and I'll declare my particular interest. I'm from Ramsgrange. Ramsgrange has a secondary school a community school that has basically the capacity for 500 pupils, but it currently has 770. Now, it's lodged a planning application, and the belief is that that planning application is going to be turned down based on water capacity, wastewater capacity. And the real problem is that we're only 1.5 miles away from where the latest sewage treatment plant was installed in Arthurstown. And there is an outlet for Ramsgrange to access that, but that hasn't happened. And I'm told now that it was announced all right by government councillors that the funding was there and it was all hunky-dory. It's not hunky-dory, and from what I'm reading, it's going to take maybe 2 to 3 years for that to happen, which is a significant stalling point for the planning, not just of the community school, but it's a parish of a community school, a national school, we have a pub, a church, a supermarket. It is a ripe parish for planning, where we need to build houses, but because of our wastewater issue, we actually can't. So I need to know how, there are, I believe, 7 or 8 other projects within this rural programme. I'd like to know how you ascertain which one goes ahead, because I know it's only going to be 1 or 2, as far as I'm aware, from a funding perspective.
So, we liaise very closely with the local authorities on these problems, so they would have a lot of say in how and what is going to be done. Sean, I think you probably have the better background on how that
So my understanding is that funding was provided for 7 locations like Ramsgrange under the Rural Water Multi-Annual Funding Programme, which is administered from the department and is executed by the local authority. We don't have a role in rural water. So
Okay.
my understanding is that the funding will be available to the local authority to put in that particular network extension, 85% centrally funded, 15% locally funded.
So it's not match funding, it's 15% from the local authority.
So I'm giving you my understanding. It has nothing to do with Ishgarden. It is essentially the rural water programme, which is administered by the local authority.
Apologies, so it's
yeah.
nothing to do with Ishgarden. That's
no.
absolutely fine.
The only thing that we'd say is that we would generally agree that when these types of projects are going ahead, and they're few and far between on the wastewater side, is that we would like them built to our standard specifications so that we can take them into public ownership straight away as soon as they're built, so that they're not a burden on the local
So
community.
clearly you liaise, even though it's not, you give the specification, I assume?
Or they could hire a contractor.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
but the contractor's working to the specification under the directive, or to your specification?
Our specification under the direction of Wexford County Council,
Okay.
and once it's completed, we will take it directly into public
So
ownership.
the funding then, Mr. Laffey, comes from the department directly?
The
of
Rural
housing.
Water Multi-Annual
Deputy,
Fund.
Which is-
that we do have under that programme, it does come directly, but we do have a representative here from the department, Mr. Mullenny, if you want to.
Mr. Manelli, you might then inform me that that funding is sanctioned.
Well, I don't have particular details on that project, but I know that there's over 900 applications under the Rural Water Programme. The stage 1...
But I'm told now that it's whittled down to 7 or 8 across,
It is,
or in 7 counties. So like Mr. Manelli, I won't take up your time. If you can get me the information, it's very important.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, because like clearly I know, so this has nothing to do with you. Well, that's perfect, because the contention is that people believe it's Irish Water who are holding up planning. So clearly it is not. And that is something that's very important to be clarified. It happens then to be the department or the council themselves in this issue. And I think it's important that we join the dots. The reasoning is the school could go ahead with their planning and put in their own wastewater treatment plant. But when we join the dots, why would they spend in excess of probably around 150,000 when that could go in and be contributed to the workings of the actual wastewater scheme for the parish or the surrounding area? So, like, it's my question is, how is it determined? And I think that's a very important factor, because it's about value for money. And we shouldn't have a school having to spend that when there's going to be an imminent connection. Maybe, you know, it would take the school probably 1.5 years, 2 years to build the project, in which case we might be ready for the connection anyway. But we're getting no clarity. That's the real issue, Mr. Manelli. So if you can come back with that, I'd appreciate it.
That's actually a different scheme. It's the Dunseward Villages. There are 7 projects that have been approved under that scheme. I think the Minister approved 45 million for those. The work is ongoing with the local authorities and Ishgare, and I think around the specs and the delivery of those 7 projects.
So now are we back to you, Mr.
No, I did say that our specification, our standards, perhaps
the same
our
thing.
contractor.
Same
But
thing.
ultimately, it's going to be the local authority that tries
Okay,
it.
but you're not holding it up, not to your knowledge anyway. So, Mr. Manelli, then I'd need the information with
Yeah,
regards to
I'll
it,
come
please.
back on that.
Yeah, as to where to go to, like, the school needs its extension. So, the other thing I wanted to ask from was, you talked about the redundancy comes to an end, what do we call it?
Voluntary severance.
Voluntary severance comes to an end the end of this month. So, in effect, if there are no further uptake of the voluntary redundancy, where does that leave you from a recruitment deficit perspective?
So we have been recruiting over the past 2 years. We've recruited 400 people this year. So we have been recruiting heavily. So
No. Where would it leave you? I mean, how many do you expect to come over from the council, Mr. Gleeson?
have we had a number on the VS?
We don't have a full number on the VS as yet from each.
Do you know how
each
many
county council.
employees there are in the sector over there, as we call it?
Yeah, there's 2,300.
Okay, so if you got them all, you would have a problem, is that correct?
No, it's a huge
Okay.
problem. And okay, we expect somewhere between 200 and 300 is kind of that's the indications,
Right,
So-
and in effect then, does that mean that the others are left without a job within the councils, or they redeploy? They redeploy?
But they have a choice. So they can redeploy within the local authorities, or they can come over to us. on
Yeah,
the
but
same
only
terms and
200 or
conditions.
300 of 2,300, is that what you said?
No.
No,
They're
the voluntary severance are the people who are leaving, so they're taking an exit package. So that's that 300. Then the remaining people have a choice. They can be redeployed in the local authority, or they can come over to us.
Okay.
But just to add, we would like them all to come over and stay
Oh,
working
I
water
appreciate that,
services.
and I think
Yeah.
that has been well thrashed out and muted, and obviously it's a work placement issue from that perspective, and I assume that your undertakings, you're doing the undertaking bit, that they're no worse off if they do come
All
over,
that, yeah,
all
yeah,
that, yeah.
And they're being streamed into roles. We've had numerous road shows, we've had one-to-one sessions. We really have worked hard to try and get people to come across. But look, I can sympathise if you've been with the local authority for 20, 30 years.
Well,
you
I
might-
can too, but I think
Yeah.
my sympathies lay with ensuring that Irish Water, Irish Air keep up.
The
And that
service.
we don't go
Yeah.
backwards, and the real
Yeah.
question that I was coming to is, have you critical skills need, and have you been placed on the critical skills list for recruitment?
We would have critical skills needs. We're not specifically on that list, all right, yeah.
And
But-
do you have an issue with it, like from that perspective? Should you be making that application in advance?
It is something we're looking at, all right, yeah. Right now, I think, right now what we're finding is, because we're quite spread out in more rural areas, certainly the west, we're getting good response, we're getting good applications, good people. I think the east coast is probably our real challenge.
Yeah, the East Coast, we are struggling, to compete with across the market. We are kind of focusing in our ads, whereas we might have gone more at a regional level previously. You're really getting into kind of advertising very, very locally to try and attract people, that they'll have that certainty they're staying within their own locality. Should they accept a post, rather than it being, responding to a regional and having fear of being, having to travel from Wicklow to Louth or something like that. So we're trying to take that fear out of it. And then just with respect
Are
to...
you getting a response?
We are actually, we've just on the local ads, we've gone out now in the east. We've had good response to the ads, and we're in currently creating panels so that as people may be redeployed back into the local authority, we can bring people in.
This is your first year here, because in general, it's now my fourth or nearly fifth, and what we get is recruitment and retention. And you don't want to move into that. I would say that it took certain sectors years to get on the critical skills list for even to be accepted onto it. And I think that's the issue. It needs to be addressed now, so as that we don't run into issues whereby you have resources but you don't have the staff.
Yeah.
And that's what's happening
Thank you.
across the board. Would you agree, Chair?
Yes, absolutely.
So-
Just to clarify with the group scheme, I know you mentioned the Ramsgrange one, I'm just thinking of other schemes like that. A lot of them provided a great service. A lot of them came into being in the 50s and 60s, where a local committee was formed, you know.
No,
there was,
Ramsgrange is not a group scheme.
local, but did it come from a group scheme? That's what I'm trying to understand.
No, it was just when
It's a
we
local
didn't
authority
have-
scheme.
Yeah,
It's on sewer at the moment, I understand.
Yeah.
No, it's on?
It's on sewer.
sewage.
There's no sewer in the village.
Yes, no, there's no sewer in the village, but the water supply at the moment, was that a group scheme? The water supply?
I couldn't tell you.
You
Because
mean,
if it's not under Ishgaren now, right? If it's not under Ishgaren, that would tell me that it wasn't taken in charge by the local authority, Wexford County Council. I'm only just saying this by way of, because I just came
no,
across.
they'd be it's all private sewage.
They're all
from
septic
that
tanks.
perspective.
No,
They're all
no,
septic
sorry,
tanks.
the water
Water
supply.
is
Separate out two things.
Ishgare.
No, where the confusion is here. Separate out two things, right? There's water supply, okay? So water supply was either by the county council or by way of a group scheme or a private well, okay?
Yeah.
Enter Irish Water. The ones that were in the charge of the county councils were then taken on board automatically by yourselves, okay?
Yeah.
That transferred over. In the case of the Ramsgrange one, right, it would appear from the answers, and I was following it very carefully, the exchange with Deputy Murphy, just to be helpful, that in the case of the Ramsgrange one, it doesn't appear to have been taken in charge by yourselves or by Wexford County Council. Right?
No, Chair, the issue is
supply-
we're talking about waste.
Yeah, no, we'll come to that in a second.
But that's what we're talking about. It's not the
And the
supply of
wastewater,
water.
the wastewater system, there is no wastewater system in it, is that correct?
That's correct.
It's, right. So
No
the
waste
the
management
creation of a
system.
wastewater system is the issue here.
That's it, yeah.
And we have one down the road that we have access to.
Yeah.
And that's the
I
issue.
know.
We have funding granted, but we haven't implemented that process.
But because the funding is coming from the department, from Mr. Mullenny's department, right, that tells me that the system is the water.
That's complete
that the water
Irish
supply
Water will
it was
come
a group
back in.
was a group scheme. I just think that would need to be clarified.
Well, the funding of the department is the unsewered, it's the wastewater element.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that the water supply in the area, by that's coming pipe water in the
That's a
area.
public scheme. It's not a group scheme.
Yeah.
But if it's a public scheme, it'd be under Laois County, or Offaly County, sorry. I'm not automatic pilot.
Wexford County Council.
Wexford County Council.
Right. And it is,
So
it's clear
it
now.
is.
It's ours.
Oh, so it is, right. Oh, that's clarified,
But
right.
that's the water coming out of the tap.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. What I'm speaking about is a scheme that's
Creation of
actually,
a- of a
creation of waste
Okay,
management.
well,
Yeah.
hopefully it can be resolved and that you can get some progress now. You have a straight line of communication with the department.
Well, it's to move it and make sure that they move in tandem with
Absolutely,
planning
yeah.
applications, yeah.
Okay, you can work together on it, that's good. So
Thanks.